Hi, I'm Jenn Donahue. I am an engineer, I'm a scientist, I'm a speaker, and an author. I'd like to tell you about the best piece of advice that I ever received. Whenever I was in high school, everybody was always opening up their high school yearbook and writing things like, "Hey, it was so great to know you. Have a great time at Texas A&M." But I had one person, and she was kind of a frenemy, and she wrote in there, "Don't become someone else just to please others." And I was kind of shocked. I was like, what kind of advice is that? It's like, does she like me? I didn't know. She's trying to say, am I fake? And I didn't realize it until maybe 15 or 20 years later, what really sage advice that was. You don't have to be somebody else just to make people like you. And it's one of those things that has really stuck with me all this time. And even though we probably have not crossed paths since then, it's one of those things that I really hold dear to me.
Wow. A frenemy giving you great advice. That's so interesting. And then you never cross paths with her again. Wow. I would pick up the phone and find this person and try to say, "Hey, first I would probably ask, "Hey, so what did you mean by that?" And second, right, if she even remembers, and second, to your point, I would absolutely let her know what an impact she made, because that's pretty profound as a high school senior, right? That's like, that's really interesting. That sounds like something coming from a teacher, Jen, more than it does coming from a fellow student. Pretty
It,
cool.
it really does. And I think you've given me a great idea. I think I will try to look her up and tell her, hey, that really random piece of advice that you put in my yearbook, that has stuck with me more than any of the other responses that I had.
Wow. Yeah. So I in my yearbook, I was "stay cool this summer." That was always what I got, because I'm from Wisconsin and it gets really hot in the summer. The only time, like the 7 days in the summer, that's over 100 degrees. So yeah. So not quite an Aggie. So did you go to A&M? Is that your background, or talk to us about your background here, Jen?
Yes, so I went to Texas A&M. I was an ocean engineer, and for those that don't know what that is, because we're very far and few between, it's civil engineering that touches the water. So we do everything from underwater submarines, offshore drilling, anything that has to do with the coast and making sure we don't have erosion. That's all the type of things that ocean engineers do. It was actually my intent whenever I was graduating. I wanted to build the world's first underwater restaurant. Unfortunately, somebody else got to that before me, and then I decided to join the US Navy. So there you have it.
Wow. Well, I mean, being in the restaurant and being in the Navy, I mean, those are really, really close, aren't they?
You would think, but no, not similar whatsoever.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's really funny. So what took you to the Navy?
I was going to A&M, and all my friends were going down to Houston, and they were working for the big oil companies. And I just had so much angst. I was like, I have got to get out. I've got to go see the world. I grew up out in West Texas, and not a lot going on there. It's just dry and flat and brown, kind of like a pancake. And I had to go out and I had to just experience life. A good friend of mine went to the Army Corps of Engineers, and I saw what a great time he was having. And I looked at all the different uniform services, and I found that the Navy was the best fit for me because they were going to take me everywhere. And they did. I went to Guam, I went to Alaska, Puerto Rico. I had the garden spots like Afghanistan and Iraq that I had to go to as well. But they gave me the opportunity to experience so many things that my friends that were just going down to Houston and working in the oil business, they never got that opportunity.
Wow. Wow. Well, I think that's a good segue into our topic today about imposter syndrome, because it sounds to me like you kind of had it figured out. I mean, I went in the Navy out of high school, and I'll tell you what, I went because I had to leave my town in order to get some experience in a town of 996 people, but I had no clue. I thought I knew what I wanted to do, but looking back, I'm like, no idea. So did you have it all figured out? I mean, imposter syndrome, like, is that something you overcame when you're like 11, or how does this work for you?
I don't think I really knew I had imposter syndrome until several years later, and I was able to put a name to it. But I always was hanging around guys. On my block, it was just me and a bunch of boys. And so I was climbing trees and jumping fences and having a good time. In high school and junior high, I was always in the math and science classes. And so really there weren't a lot of other girls in there with me. So I was kind of around guys all the time. Same thing whenever I got into Texas A&M. There was only 2 women that were in ocean engineering. And so I was just still hanging out with guys. Now there's very few women, and there's even fewer women that are in engineering that join the military. So we're still only about 9% women in the field that I was in. And so again, I'm just around guys all the time. And what I started to realize was that I hate to say, camouflaging myself so that I blended in with the guys all the time. I didn't want to stick out. I didn't want to be noticed for all the wrong reasons. And so I kind of camouflaged myself. And it wasn't until years later that I realized that this was a type of imposter syndrome. I was trying to be like others instead of just being myself.
So it took you some time to listen to your high school friend, huh? To actually really lean into who you are and who you wanted to be. So that's so interesting. Was there like a seminal event? Did something like conk you on the head? You know, like who was it? Charles Darwin, right? An apple fell in his head and he discovered, or Isaac Newton, right, with gravity or something, right? I mean, or was it just a gradual thing?
It was really a gradual thing. And really only until about maybe 5 years ago did I realize that this was really going on. And I started to talk to some of my friends because this is just the way that I had been all this time. And it really took a conscious effort to realize I am trying to be something that I'm not. And it just took a really long time to get there. I know that some people they understand who they are and are able to act on that more quickly. But for some reason, maybe I'm just a slow learner. It took me a little while to get there.
Wow. Well, you said something there that's really strong. Imposter syndrome can be as simple as trying to be someone you're not, and I think it's so important, right? I don't think you're a slow learner. I think we all learn, and then we have to relearn and we have to unlearn and we have to learn, kind of learn again and learn new. So that, but with that, I think it really starts with maybe we don't even know who we are first. So how do we get that, right? How do we understand who we are so that we can get to the point of really embracing that?
I think we have to stop what we're doing. And I know this is going to sound absolutely crazy, but consider taking some of the personality tests. I took the Myers-Briggs, I took the Clifton Strengths, and I thought there is no way these tests are going to tell me anything about myself because I'm an individual and no test can tell me what. I was shocked, absolutely shocked at what they said about me. And I realized, oh my gosh, this is who I am. And you start reading through it and start to understand that, yes, maybe I am hiding some of my feelings because I'm trying to please others. That was me. I'm a pleaser. And so I started to really take that to heart, that these are some of the items that I need to overcome. And now when I'm talking about personality tests, I'm not talking about, hey, taking the Facebook one of like, if I'm a potato, what kind of potato would I be? Don't take that kind. But really just sit and understand who you are. The personality tests are a great way to get there, but start thinking about when you look around the room and realize, hey, I'm a little bit different when I'm around these people. I've been in the military for several years and I'm now a reservist. And one of the things that coworkers have always said is they can tell when I'm on a military call because all of a sudden my voice gets very deep and I talk with a different type of very direct, whenever I'm talking to people is different. My husband has said that whenever I'm wearing my uniform, that I'm standing up different. I'm more confident. And it's interesting because I'm taking all these little pieces on whenever I'm doing my military duty that aren't necessarily part of really who I am. So it's one of those things that I have to consciously think about and say, yes, this is okay when I'm doing military work, or this is okay when I'm being a civilian. And it's something that I just have to keep churning through and just self-analyzing over and over again.
Wow, that's interesting. Every uniform that we wear, whether it's a formal uniform in the military or we get dressed up for work or this is what we're, working out in, I think often does dictate our behavior, and it consciously or unconsciously. So knowing that certainly can help us, right? We can use that to our advantage and still lean out and do that. I'll tell you, one of the challenges that I had when I was in this service was, I don't like to follow rules. I like to go right to the edge of them. So one of the things that I would get in trouble for was they if they didn't have it in the regulations, I would make my bed not with the normal white sheets, but I would have black sheets because they were easier to keep clean. Well, I would get busted for that because they'd be like, well, no, they're supposed to be white. And I would ask the question, where in the regulation is that? So I'm wondering, is being rebellious, is that part of who we are, do you think? Or is that really just kind of, just being a rule breaker, not really, I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going with that. So what do you think?
So I will tell you that even though I've been in the military for 26 years, I also have a problem with authority, which is crazy to think about, but I do. But I have a really great story about a good friend named Jenny. And so she's also a rule breaker. And she went to work every day, and engineers, we kind of have our own little uniform. We had the blue button-down shirts and the khaki pants. And she was wearing that every day to work until she finally said, you know what? This isn't me. This isn't who I am. And she said, you know what? I'm going to wear a skirt tomorrow to work. And I mean, it blew people's minds like, oh my gosh, we can see her legs, and it's like, but these are just like little bitty things that, yes, it is like a uniform that we put on that, yes, we're supposed to act like engineers. We're supposed to dress like engineers. And she was like, nope, I'm wearing a skirt. And now she's wearing dresses. I mean, it's absolutely like so yes, it's all about breaking those rules and really just sort of embracing who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so right on, understanding who we are first. Mm-hmm. And also then understanding, what does that even mean? Like, how does that show up? Is that slacks? Is that a skirt? Is that, is that a dress in guy's instance, right? Is it a tie? Is it a polo shirt? What does that look like? And I think that's interesting, but how do we get past the fact that people are going to judge us and get to the point where we can embrace that? Because I know that I struggle with that, right? I love who I am for sure, no question about it, but I also struggle with, but I want them to like me, Jen.
Right. That's a hard one to look at. My friend Jenny, the way that she got over this is she said, I know who I am. I know what I bring to the fight. And you know what? If I'm wearing a skirt or a dress and you don't like that, I don't want to work with you. And I was, wow, that's actually kind of profound. That's really putting yourself out there. But she knew what she was worth. She knew the job that she could do. She knew the clients that she could bring in. And she says, it doesn't matter if I'm wearing a skirt or pants. She's like, I know what I can do. And I think that's so profound that, we feel like we have to fit in, and we need to just take a step back and realize what our worth is. That's really what's going to give us the confidence so that we can start to be the person that we really want to be. But it's really understanding your worth. What are your values? What are your strengths? What do you bring to the fight?
No, that's so good. That's so good, and such a good reminder. I mean, looking back at what we've already accomplished and understanding that we have value is super important. And I think that's a thing that sometimes I forget. I know others that I've talked to forget, and what sometimes gives us imposter syndrome. So do you keep like a brag book? I mean, do you have like a notebook or a file or something where you keep track of those things when you've been kicked in the face one time and you're like, well, no, hold on, I can sit up straight, I know that I've done this before? I mean, how do you handle that?
I'm totally old school. And so when I have those feelings, again, I literally grab a pen and a piece of paper and I make myself sit down and I start to write out all my accolades, all of my awards, what my values are, what my strengths are, what I'm most proud of. And then I always finish it off with, what do I love? I love math and science. That's what I absolutely love. And I'm so geared towards that. And I have to just write that down. I love math. I love science. But I could keep that in probably a binder, but for me, it helps me to just write it out again. And I just got to keep it towards the desk until I'm like, okay, I got this. I know that I can do this. Look at all this that I've done. I can't fail at this because I know that I can do it.
Wow. I like the old schoolness of it. Yeah, I do too, right? So right by my desk, I've got my little notebook, right? Little Minions notebook, right? Banana. So, I've got one of those. And I've also sort of new school with my Rocket book, because then that can transition into digital too. So it depends on what I'm working on. But certainly it can go either way for me. But I like the physicalness of writing things out, and I do think that helps the brain process a lot better. So do you have a special notebook? Are you like, because this is a moleskin, right? I'm most comfortable with a moleskin, especially if they're hard back, because they, then I can hit myself in the head with them, right? But anything special at all about that for you, about your practice?
I actually grab a piece of paper out of the printer and just start writing down, and I just kind of leave it on the desk. Now I know a lot of other people who have, inspirational signs around their office and things like that, and I've thought about maybe doing something like that myself, but just for me, I have to just grab that piece of paper out of the printer, grab my pen, and just start going at it. And whenever I do that, it really helps to kind of clear out all those cobwebs, and it kind of gives me a nice fresh slate. If I'm thinking about it and I write it down, it helps me not to have to think about it again, if that makes sense, because it's already there and it's on that piece of paper. But putting it into a book is probably a good idea also. But for me, I have to basically start from the beginning and I just write it all out.
Awesome. So you're an Instagrammer. We follow each other there, and that's super fun. I'm Jenn Donahue there. Really easy. But so do you doom scroll at all? Do you like scroll through and run into comparison traps? And if you do, how do you deal with that?
I do. One of the things I'm really trying to do is get my speaking business off the ground. And I've noticed, other people who are just killing it out there. And I'm like, oh, wow, look at how great she's doing, or look at how great he's doing. And I'm never going to get there. It's like, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And so all these clouds of doubt start to come in. Am I good enough for this? Do I have the stamina? Look at all those things, they start to come in. And that's one of the issues with Instagram and Twitter and all of these. We start to look at other people and we start to compare ourselves to others. Now, a lot of these people that I'm comparing myself to, they've been in the business for a couple of years, and maybe they were in the same spot that I am. And I have to remember that they didn't just jump right into it and were just given everything on a plate. They also worked for it. They strove. They did everything that they can to try to get there. And so what I just have to do is take a step back and look at that and say, this is where I want to be in 2 years. This is where I want to be in 3 years. And write that down and have my own list. There's a couple of different conferences that I want to go to. And so I've started to list those down. This is where I want to be next year. This is where I want to be in 5 years. I think I can do this in the next X amount of years. I start to write all of that down so that I have a goal and I'm not comparing others' strengths to my weaknesses. And that's a big part of that, is that I have my own strengths, but I'm just not there yet.
Not comparing our strengths or our weaknesses to others is so important. I read somewhere, comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes.
Right? If we compare ourselves, because no two people are exactly alike, so there's no reason to do that. But how do you you write it out? But I mean, still, like if I'm scrolling through Instagram, I'm gonna be like, wow. Sometimes, like, they've got a pretty darn good life. Like, and then or like, wow, I want to be there. I see, people that are at conferences and stuff, and I get a little bit jealous, if you will, about that. And I'm like, oh man, I wish I could be there. So. Is it for you? Is it really as simple as just writing it out, or do you unfollow them or block them, or do you send them nasty messages? I mean, I haven't gotten any from you yet, so I might not be living the good life you want. But I mean, how's that work, Jenn?
I am very goal driven, and so when I see these types of things, I write it down and I make a path in order to get to that goal. I'm very competitive. That's just in my nature. And so when I see somebody speaking at a conference, I'm like, oh, I want to be at that conference. And so I write it down and I figure out, how do I get to that conference next? Who do I need to talk to in order to get there? That's how I deal with a lot of it. I will absolutely tell you, there's a couple minutes where I'm like, I'm just getting jealous. And I'm like, oh, I want to be there. And then it's like, okay, okay, I'm over it. I'm over it. Okay, how do I get there? And so I have to make a plan. I have a goal. I'm competitive. I'm going to get there. That's how I get over it. So if you don't think that I'm jealous for a couple of minutes, that's an absolute lie. So, but I just had to stop, get a path, get my goal, and then start moving forward. I have tons of them. You should see like my desk. There's like stickies all over the place. Go talk to this person, go talk to this person, try to get here. It's all about trying to make my own pathways to get to where I want to go.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Well, so with that, one of your keynote themes is about doing the difficult, right? Yes. Do the difficult and then the impossible. So I'm sure that somehow ties in to imposter syndrome. So tell me about an example of when you did that and what that means to you, Jen.
So we have a motto in the U.S. Navy Seabees, which is what I'm part of, and it's the difficult takes some time, the impossible takes a little longer. And it's something that it goes back to our core of who we were in the military. You know, we were island hopping in all these different places, and it was almost impossible to get everything that we needed there so that the Marines could come in, so that they could keep pushing forward, so that we could win World War II. And it's been part of our mantra ever since. And I've really taken that on, and I realized that if I put my mind to it, I can do anything. The difficult is going to take a little bit of time, but the impossible is not impossible. We just have to think about what that is. As I said, I've been to Iraq and I've been to Afghanistan, and there were just some impossible situations that we came across. I've had my helicopter fired at a couple times, and, I've been pushing people out on projects where we have insurgents and everything like that. And people keep saying, we can't do it. We can't do it. And we had to find ways in order to make things possible. Even in my own personal life, I own an engineering company, and everybody said, it's so hard. You're not going to be able to do it. You should just stay with corporate America, get a steady paycheck. And I'm like, no, I've got to do it. I know I can do it. I had a great mentor. And that's another piece of this, is like, have a great mentor that you can bounce ideas off of. He gave me some really sage advice, and it's just basically just trying to grab onto that and then just taking that leap. You have to take the leap in order to make the impossible possible.
Wow. So talk to me about that mentorship. I think that's that's an important piece for some of us, that sometimes we don't have that. We need an external voice, a second voice, if we will, to get through that, so that it can help us overcome imposter syndrome, that maybe can remind us of that. So how'd you find your mentor, and how often do you meet?
I have several mentors. I have a technical mentor, I have a business mentor, and then I have kind of a life coach mentor. For the business side of it, it was really, his name was Rudy. He was the one who really helped me develop my business and have everything that I needed whenever I took that leap, into the void to start my own company. And I have a technical mentor as well. He's one of the most phenomenal scientists that I've ever met. And he was instrumental in helping me find clients, because he's so big in our industry. He basically pulled me along and made those introductions so that I could have a thriving business. And then on the life side of it, I have somebody who's absolutely fantastic at leadership and has a great home life and is able to balance the work and the personal life. And so when I need to, I speak to each one of these mentors as it comes up. I know some people have mentors like, all right, every first Monday we're going to talk. And that's great if that's the type of structure that you need for your mentor. For me, it's been more organic. Hey, I have some questions. I want to bounce some ideas off of you. And they are always more than willing to spend time with me in order to get that done. And I don't believe one mentor is going to do it, because everybody has so many different facets in their life. There's usually not one person that can be the end all be all. So think about having a board of directors, where you have one person who's really good at this and somebody who's good at something else, and you can glean those ideas off of them to try to make yourself a better person overall.
Yeah, I like that. The idea of a mentorship board of directors is a super great idea, because everybody does bring different facets in. So I really like that. That's solid advice. So Jen, let's take us home here. Let's talk. If people are struggling today, with imposter syndrome, with moving forward, with maybe they're stuck and they're like, I don't know that I can do it.
Right.
Give us some advice, maybe a step or two, some practical, tactical stuff that they can do to propel themselves forward and get through the imposter syndrome or the doubt.
Absolutely. So we talked about those clouds of doubt. Am I good enough? Am I really supposed to be here in this room with all these experts? You have all of those clouds of doubt. So the very first step is to recognize, we get so into our head that like, oh my gosh, okay, just stop, take a deep breath and pull yourself back for a minute and recognize that this is imposter syndrome basically roaring into your life and you need to back it down. So just recognize that you have it. Are these irrational feelings? Are you self-limiting yourself? Now that you have that chance, you can take a deep breath and say, okay, I'm ready to go forward. Just acknowledge this and just challenge your brain to go to the next step. And so for me, the next step is just really analyzing and thinking about why you were there. You're there for a purpose. If you're in a company and they put you in a boardroom with a whole bunch of other people, most companies aren't going to spend the money on somebody that they don't have faith in. So understand that you are there for a purpose. You have value. Like I said, grab a piece of paper, grab a notebook, whatever it might be. Start writing down all those accolades. Just start with, hey, I graduated high school. I graduated college. Maybe you have an MBA, whatever that is. Start writing all that down. What are your strengths? Hey, I'm really good at talking to people. Hey, I'm really good at math or science. Start writing these things down. And like I said, at the end, write down why you love what you do. I love what I do because I love math and science. I love speaking to people and helping them with their own leadership styles and that they can overcome imposter syndrome also. Write those things down. That's going to start to boost your confidence. And it's going to help you go forward again to the very next step. And what that is acting. Okay, now you have all those accolades. What I really want you to do is stop comparing yourself. That's one of the biggest pieces of this. Stop comparing yourself to others. Yes, they do have strengths, but those strengths aren't necessarily your weakness. That's something that you can aspire to. Look to those people and think of them as an inspiration. How can you get to where they are if you feel that you're inadequate in some places? This will give you something to go back on and say, hey, you know what? I need to work on this so that I can be better. So these are some of the ideas that I have in order to try to get those clouds of doubt out of your head. So recognize it, analyze it, and then start acting on it.
Wow. Great stuff, Jen. Lots of smart bombs there. That recognition and analysis, so important. But then get moving. Get
Exactly.
going forward. If you need it, right, create that personal mentorship board of directors and stop the comparisons. Really,
Right.
really great, Jen. I love that. So if folks want to learn more from you, of course, they can go to jendonahue.com. That's JenDonahue. And then, Jen, you said, where's your favorite place to hang out? If people want to talk to you, have questions online, we mentioned Instagram before. I'm Jenn Donahue, but where else?
I'm also on Twitter at Jenn Donahue, Jenn Donahue. You can also email me. I'm Jen at jendonahue.com. And I would absolutely love to hear from other people. I love to hear people's stories. I love to hear how they've overcome imposter syndrome. To me, that really fuels me so that I can maybe take this message and help others. So if you've found ways that you have been able to overcome it, please let me know because I would love to hear what you did.
Wow. Love that. So, folks, if you're listening, think about reaching out to Jen. Send her an email, real easy, Jen at jendonahue.com. Share your trials, tribulations, challenges, and triumphs with Jen. Let her know how she can help you. Jen, it is just a pleasure to talk with you, my friend. Thank you for sharing so freely, and thanks for the insight into how to overcome imposter syndrome. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Phil. I've had such a good time this morning. I really appreciate you having me on.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. And thanks, everyone, for watching, for listening, and for doing the work to overcome imposter syndrome for you.